Death on the Nile is the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. That movie was directed by Kenneth Branagh, also starring him as Hercule Poirot. This one once again brings him back as that character as well as in the director's chair. And this film is about Hercule Poirot, who's trying to take kind of a vacation off in Egypt. He's just trying to get away from cases and murder at the moment. He, by pure happenstance, like he usually does in the Agatha Christie books, ends up with a group of people who are going out. He's invited along on this boat tour across the Nile, and then all of a sudden somebody dies in the midst of all of their fun, so he has to round everybody up and figure out who done it. When I reviewed Orient Express a couple years ago, I made mention that I had read that book. I'm a fan of quite a bit of Agatha Christie's works. That being said, even though I do have Death on the Nile on my bookshelf, I got it like recently too, in preparation because I wanted to read it before seeing this movie. I've actually never read Death on the Nile, so I really went into this movie not really knowing anything, unlike Orient Express where, you know, I had a good idea, despite any changes that were going to be made from, you know, book to screen. I had a good idea of what was to come. This one I had no idea, so I was just going in ready to see this new story, and as someone who did enjoy Orient Express, I was definitely hoping for the best with this movie, but that being said, I didn't go in with like sky-high expectations because I kind of did from Orient Express in 2017. I was like, you know, if this movie isn't fantastic, then I don't know, you know, I feel like it has every right to be, and it was definitely fun and entertaining. I've rewatched it a couple times since theaters, and it definitely still holds up as far as a fun watch. Kenneth Branagh is just, you know, so much fun as the character, but I didn't really think that the direction and writing, the execution for some elements of this movie really worked overall. So I went into this movie kind of going like, you know, it'll at least probably be a pretty fun time, you know, because Kenneth Branagh's back, and Michael Green, the screenwriter from the last movie, is also coming back. He's been involved with a couple good movies over the years. So I'm kind of expecting the same kind of quality as Orient Express going into this. It did not help that, you know, after a year of it being pushed back, like it was originally supposed to come out like end of 2020, then of course, you know, pushed to 2021, and then a couple more dates in 2021 until this date of February 2022. So it's been like, God, I don't know. I guess I'm still interested, but it's not even to the same way it was back when it was initially coming out. It also didn't help knowing that there are a handful of stars in this movie that haven't done the best since this production is wrapped, you know, and it kind of ranges from like, you know, some things have been just kind of tone deaf. You might be able to forgive them, you know, but it's kind of like, you kind of are saying the wrong things here, not really right. And then it ranges from that to gross, disgusting, oh my God, who even are you? And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about when I say that, so let's just move on. For the sake of people's comfort, I don't want to dwell on it, but yeah, that didn't help my anticipation for this movie, knowing there's going to be a couple people here that I might not want to see. But that being said, you know, walking out of this movie, I definitely had a good time with it. I can say it's probably about on par with Orient Express as far as quality goes. In fact, in some ways, it is like a little better because there are ways where it seemed like they listened to some criticism that even I had with the movie, and actually tried to improve upon it. One thing is that you kind of do feel like you are solving some of the mystery with Hercule Poirot this time around. In Orient Express, it was kind of like, you know, he's the greatest detective in the world, and he's so razor sharp, he's finding clues everywhere before you even have a chance to really take in everything. And in this movie, I think they do a better job of kind of bringing you along. Like when he sees something, you are also seeing it in that moment too. Because that's a part of the fun of watching a murder mystery where you have a detective who's trying to solve stuff, is that the way it's crafted usually is that you are in that position discovering stuff too. This movie does a way better job with that aspect of it. This movie also, I think, does a pretty good job with pacing this time around more so. Before the initial murder happens, I won't spoil who it is in case anyone doesn't know, but they actually do spend a serviceable amount of time with our cast of suspects before it happened. You know, it actually is like quite a while before the murder takes place, which I think is a better way to get you kind of more adjusted to the characters, to get you to at least recognize them before things start to go hairy. In Orient Express, there's so many supporting players, and there really, in my opinion, wasn't enough time in that last movie to get you kind of properly acquainted with them, to see them kind of banter back and forth as, you know, things start to reveal themselves, as clues start to be found. You know, there just wasn't enough time for me to care about that cast of characters, despite them all played well by great actors. In this case, they do a better job. I will say there are definitely moments where I was like, like, you probably could have spent a little bit more time showing this side of the character off, or showing these characters maybe butting heads at one point. There's definitely, I think, missed opportunities in some ways, because, you have a certain runtime they probably had to meet, and there's only so many time to do everything they need to, but I think they could have probably pushed some areas with characters a bit more. That being said, it's still way better than what they did with the last movie. Even though this movie does make some improvements over the last movie, I can say that for sure there are definitely some of the same problems carried over. I just mentioned one, but also the editing and kind of visual effects, hamper down some of the, otherwise, brilliant kind of set design work and, costume designs, and for all intents and purposes, great cinematography. But then if you're gonna dump CGI on it that doesn't look that good, like CGI is so bad to the point where you recognize at one point Hercule Poirot and Tom Bateman are like standing by a pyramid, and you can totally see that the sky is not real, and they're clearly on a set. I don't think we should be making. I don't think we should be making those kind of mistakes for a movie that has this much money behind it too. So some CGI bit. I think in some cases the visual problems are worse in this one than Orient Express, because Orient Express was kind of excusable up to a point where it's like, okay, every time they cut to like a faraway shot where, they have to do digital work, it doesn't look the best, but whatever, what are you gonna do? And then like when the train initially hits the snow, it doesn't look the best. In this one, I think it looks more noticeable and kind of worse, but it also has a problem of editing in the sense that, dubbing is a problem. Occasional cuts to like, slow-mo stuff, it's not the best like put together as far as like putting the final touches on things. There's certain things you could just let a scene play out and you don't need to edit it the way that they did. It was a little frustrating, and it reminded me of like some of the editing quibbles I had with the last movie. And I think this movie also has a problem with tone, not necessarily humor, because there is some funny moments in this movie, whether it be just some back and forth between Tom Bateman and Kenneth Branagh, or just focusing on Hercule Poirot's just like attention to detail so much so that it becomes funny and kind of humorous. That stuff is funny, but every once in a while it'll seem like they'll include something that doesn't really gel with everything else going on. Like there's a really weirdly set up kind of shot where Gal Gadot is like in this outfit, and she's like proclaiming like, everybody look at that, and it's just, once you see it you'll know what I mean, but watching it I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, like what are we doing here? This is so weird. It's not really like funny or like oh my gosh, it looks so gorgeous the way they shot it. It just is like this weird distraction where they stop the movie to do this one thing. I was like, why are we doing this? So there's a couple points like that. My last thing I'll say negatively, I know I've been like unleashing a lot of my negatives, but it's really just to get them out of the way. I do enjoy a lot of the way this movie goes. But there are definitely some points also where it seems like some of the actors didn't get the best direction in the world, because there's some line readings where it's kind of like, oof, can you maybe do this one more time? And I hate to like put like a specific spotlight on someone, but I think this mostly applies to like Annette Benning, unfortunately, who's an actress that I love, doing a British accent in this one too. But it just felt like almost every single line read she had in this movie was kind of just like this emotionless kind of dud, and that was so disappointing to me, as someone who has liked her before, has liked her work, and I was excited to see her in a movie like this, and then it's just kind of like this role that's kind of, But other than that, I think everyone in the cast, does a pretty solid job all around, despite those, miscellaneous moments where the line reading isn't perfect. Everyone, I think, does a pretty solid job with what they have to do. Russell Brand, it doesn't have a single comedic line in this entire film, which was surprising to me, but he's like serious, and he does a pretty solid job at that. There's a couple people I wanted to mention specifically. I heard something recently where like a reviewer was like, I don't really want to talk about like the suspects too much because, if you say one thing one way, you could potentially spoil it. So I'm going to listen to that advice because it's good advice. But there's three people in particular I really want to talk about. First off, Kenneth Branagh as Hercule Poirot. He's still so much fun as this character. I like how they actually include some backstory for him. It's backstory that isn't just thrown in because, well, let's just give him some more character. It kind of ties into this overall theme of love, what love makes a person do, how it can affect somebody, the disgusting, dirty things that we can do just for love, but also some of the good things we do because of it. I really like how, you know, it ties into that theme. The theme itself, you know, because they have a chance to focus more on the characters and really get you to know them, I think the theme is actually more effective this time around. It's really, really cool seeing how it plays out and affects the narrative. The second person I want to bring up is Tom Bateman, who the character Book was in Orient Express, but is not in Death on the Nile, the novel. As far as I know, he's not in that book. You know, his character is kind of swapped out for somebody else, I believe. Once again, I've not read it, but I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere that he's not in the book. But I was so happy that he was back, you know, because Tom Bateman is just such a fun actor when it comes to playing this character. And when he and Hercule Poirot meet up, it's just like this, hey, old friend, and it's just so much fun. You're like, oh, you know what? I'm glad this guy is back, because it could have started off as just like, well, we need someone from the last movie, I guess. How about this guy? Yeah, he can just keep popping up or something. But I'm glad it wasn't just like, let's bring him in just for like some cheap laughs every once in a while. Like, no, he's effectively engaged with the narrative, with the mystery. He's trying to help out Hercule Poirot. He has a lot more to do than Orient Express, in my opinion, which I thought was really great because he's such a fun actor. He's so fun to watch. Last person I'll mention, Emma Mckay. I have not watched her in Sex Education. I don't think I've seen her in anything before, but you know, in a cast where you have so many established actors already, and she's kind of like a newcomer, you know, she kind of blew them all away, in my opinion. She really stood out from everybody else. She was so good here. Such an interesting character. You know, a lot of different wavelengths you have to ride as far as the emotion on that character, but she pulls it off pretty expertly well. She was like, every time she was on screen, my eyes were drawn to her, always wondering, what's this character going to do next, you know, because she is so good at inhabiting that role. So overall, I had fun with this movie. I'm a sucker for the whodunit, the murder mystery genre as a whole, whether it be film, television, or book. So, you know, needless to say, me liking this movie should be no surprise to anybody. I think slightly I prefer it over Orient Express, as I mentioned, but there definitely are some issues that I had with some of the filmmaking, some of the execution. I don't think this is a perfectly flawless movie, but if you're just looking for a fun little whodunit with some pretty solid performances, this is the way to go. I'm gonna give Death on the Nile a B+, literally the same grade I give Orient Express now. They're both decent movies that Kenneth Branagh, you know, makes it well enough. Honestly, if they wanted to make a third movie just to close out like a trilogy, or, you know, keep making movies for just as long as they want, then as long as it's at least the quality of these maybe a little better as they go on, then I would be all for it. I've been enjoying them up to now. But if you've seen Death on the Nile, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.